Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS This is Ukraine War News update, second part thereof for the 26th of July 2024. We have a military aid and equipment and other kind of aid to Ukraine. We have that section now. We start with the Pentagon finding $2 billion behind the sofa, which is very useful. $2 billion worth of errors in its calculations for ammunition, missiles, and other equipment sent to Ukraine, according to Reuters. As a result, an additional $2 billion worth of arms can be sent to Ukraine. This is incredible that they've done this yet again. I think this is a third time that there's been a reassessment of the value of the munitions that they are sending to the favour of Ukraine. Previously, we had known that there was a $6 billion error that allowed $6 billion of extra stuff to be sent. Now another $2 billion. This is really good news for Ukraine. There's no doubt about that. I wonder how that will be apportioned. Then we hear today that Ursula von der Leyen has declared that the EU stands with Ukraine today. So this is happening today. We transfer 1.5 billion euros in proceeds from immobilized Russian assets to the defense and reconstruction of Ukraine. There is no better symbol for use for the Kremlin's money than to make Ukraine and all of Europe a safer place to live. So that's what she said today. That's really good news. That has obviously been released today for Ukraine. Nexter, though, have said this, and I don't know, I can't see this anywhere else, so maybe this is the case. The first tranche allocated to Kiev from the proceeds of Russian assets will go to a peace fund to compensate EU countries for weapons, European Commission head Ursula von der Leyen said. So possibly elsewhere in her quotes is the idea that this is going back to the European nations who have already given a bunch of stuff to Ukraine, but are waiting for that to be compensated for the recompense there. So, yeah, I mean, this is really, really good news. And that money needed to get, obviously, to those countries at some point. And that's where it's come from. So it might not be, and again, try and confirm this if you can, but it might not be that Ukraine suddenly has 1.5 billion euros to spend on new equipment, but this is going into the funds that are needed to compensate those who have given Ukraine stuff already. Warsaw is delivering its 45th military aid package to Kiev, which includes significant amounts of ammo, said former Ukrainian ambassador to Poland, Vasyl Zvarich. The total value of the aid to Ukraine from Poland has exceeded $4 billion, the diplomat added. So I don't know the exact details of what is going to be given, but obviously Ukraine need as much ammunition as possible. Significant amounts of ammunition there. Anyway, I have got an ad blocker on, so it's not liking that. Yeah, there's no other details there. Right, what we do, however, understand is that that military aid package is something rather significant. 10 MiG-29 fighters are going to Ukraine. So that's really good news. Ukraine's MiG-29 fleet has probably dwindled somewhat. It's not exactly the newest fighter that is going to be nearly as capable as something like an F-16 coming online, but they still have a job to do and can be used more probably in air defense roles, taking out cruise missiles and whatnot that are thrown into Ukrainian airspace. So that's excellent news for the Ukrainians, as some of their older Soviet stocks will be dwindling as the weeks and months pass. Now, can Ukraine's coming F-16s crack Fortress Crimea? Ukraine expects F-16 jets soon, as US strategist Peter Zion predicts counteroffensive, citing Ukraine's attacks on Russian air defences in occupied Crimea. So we saw that this morning with further degradation of equipment at Saki airfield and near there, including potentially air defence systems, one at Jankoy recently as well. And the idea that the Russians are moving their air defence units, what they have left, to the Crimean Bridge area to protect the bridge, then actually you could build up a case that Ukraine are going to be able to directly strike Crimea with F-16s and other munitions, and possibly lay the groundwork for some kind of move on Crimea. Now that will be your best case scenario for Ukraine. I don't know how realistic that is at all, that latter part particularly. Will F-16s enable rapid action, asks the Euromaidan Press. Without going into their actual article, we'll just look at a couple of bits they say. Ukrainian defense expert Mikhailo Samus says 2024 is the most critical year. He proposes a Crimean blockade, emphasizing urgency before potential US policy shifts. The strategy involves disrupting Russian logistics without a ground operation. So I think that's probably the more likely outcome here, that they will just creep closer and closer to Crimea in terms of aircraft being able to hit Crimea, and they'll probably ramp up, or they probably are, almost certainly are ramping up attack drone production capacities and things like the Neptune missile production capacity. And if they can hit Crimea more and more and more, then it becomes untenable for the Russians to remain there. That is already the case for the Black Sea Fleet. The Black Sea Fleet has already left Sevastopol, right? So the Ukraine is already halfway there. This is a phenomenal success in Crimea. Now, Ukrainian experts Bielyskov and Krychevsky argue F-16s are insufficient for a near-term offensive. Krychevsky describes Crimea as a fortress, fortified since 2014. Both warn current aid levels are inadequate to crack this stronghold. I think probably that is the case. I wouldn't say that you are likely to see Ukrainians set foot on Crimea in any meaningful way. Yes, we've had the odd Marine Special Forces attack on certain areas for like half an hour here, and then blow some things up and then hot foot it back to the oil rigs. But in any meaningful way, I think that's probably unrealistic. But again, it's going to be trying to make Crimea untenable, blockade it by shoving all sorts of ordnance into Crimea. Now, interestingly, there's just been a Farnborough air show. I mentioned it yesterday because Mark Kelly was there, Senator Mark Kelly from Arizona. It's the UK's most prominent air show. And Mark Kelly was there sort of talking to people, I think probably getting a bit of intel and knowledge about certain things going on here and there pertaining to places like Ukraine. Well, US Bell, a company, obviously a helicopter company, has offered Ukraine 407M light attack helicopters discussed at Farnborough Air Show. Based on civilian 407, it features 6 weapon mounts, Hellfire and APKWS missile capability. So those Hydra missiles that we've seen. I told you they are designed for helicopters, but they've been used particularly near the Dnipro River by the Ukrainians, firing off the back of SUVs and whatnot. 246 kilometer an hour maximum speed, 4-hour endurance, NVG compatible cockpit. I don't know what that means. And it's much more cost effective, or it's cost effective versus the Apache or the Viper. So this could be an answer. So instead of getting, trying to trot out those old whatever they are, the hind and the hip helicopters to try and hit behind the contact line, you could get a smaller helicopter. It's got a smaller footprint, pretty quick. It's got some missile capability that's pretty similar, and then launch some of those missiles into Russian areas. Could be more agile and more, I don't know, it could be more useful than some of those larger attack helicopters. Probably fewer crew, etc., etc. So that is offered. And as Ukraine get sort of money in, so they go, $2 billion from the US that could be used. Like, could some of that be put towards foreign military sales and whatnot? I don't know. But there you go. It is an option. The Ukrainian agency sells vehicles seized from a pro-Putin oligarch to buy military bonds. Proceeds from the sale of 2 vehicles seized from pro-Russian oligarch Viktor Medvedchuk will be used to support the Ukrainian military, Ukraine's Asset Recovery and Management Agency reported yesterday. This is good news. Using frozen or confiscated pro-Russian oligarch assets within Ukraine to fund the war. Good to see that is happening. And then Germany's financed the purchase of 4 small buses for the transportation of people with reduced mobility for communities of the Sumy region. The buses, which cost over 85,000 euros each, will be used in Jampil, Krasnopilia, and a number... Oh, what have I done? I don't know why it did that. Anyway, there we go. Lipovodolin and Shostka. So far, the German government has financed 29 of these vehicles. This was announced by the Sumy Regional State Administration on its social media channels. Don't forget the amount of work being done behind the military scenes to support Ukraine in every way possible. That's really good news, and thank you to Germany there. Okay, John Hardy says, the Ukrainian Telegram channels shared photos of a previously unidentified Russian one-way attack drone downed in Kyiv Oblast. Interestingly, the serial number begins with some kind of letter BL. Is that some kind of Ukrainian Russian transcription similar to the Russian assembled variant of the Shahid 136, suggesting that this new drone may also be made by Russia's plant in Alabuga. Alabuga plant was targeted by one of those big drones that fell near the dormitories there. Remember, that's also the place where they're trying to get a sweatshop full of local students and others that they've got from Africa. The drone also contains 2 3G, 4G antennas and a SIM card that resembles a Kyivstar SIM card previously recovered in a Russian assembled Shahid 136. The channel also indicated the drone's fuselage is covered in radar absorbing material. Ukrainian officials have previously said Russia has done the same on Shahid 136 fuselages as well. So some adaptation from the Russians there in terms of their attack drones. Then we see this. So it's another video image or another bit of video footage of Russian equipment going on the trains to the front lines, to the war zone. Here we have almost entirely these old tracked vehicles. So when we see a huge train full of stuff like this, what does it tell us? That's what we're going to look at in a second. We're going to look at what these vehicles are, but quite a few of them are these tracked tractors, actually, what are sometimes called tractors. So these are the ATS 59G. These are very old pieces of equipment, and that is the G variant that we saw there. These are old Soviet pieces of kit, and what I love about Wikipedia is sometimes it's so on the button. So that bit of footage has just come out, right? And I was looking down here, and in July 2024, okay, we're in July now, several units were spotted being transported to the front on a military train. And then it's got a Twitter footnote there. So, oh my goodness, that's already, this Wikipedia page for ATS 59 has already been updated with that bit of video footage has just come out. Incredible. Anyway, this is one in a Belgrade military museum. I mean, that's how old and crappy and rusty it is. But these are now being sent to the front line by the Russians. Now, I'm not saying these aren't useful, but when you've got something that's been built on a T-55 chassis, you're talking about something that is very old. We're talking, 70 years old? When you are sending that kind of equipment to the front, 70-year-old equipment, you're wondering whether you're in a good place. And again, it feeds into this picture of Russia that they are in a suboptimal position when they're having to send equipment like that to the front. Now, not too much to do with equipment used in the war, but pertaining to the war, pertaining to nuclear war. Britain wants to create weapons to counter Putin's nuclear threat. Right, the country is discussing the development of long-range missiles. They are planned to be deployed in Germany instead of American ones, the Times reports, citing sources. Now, yesterday, there was an agreement signed between Germany and the UK. The UK has said they want to reset European relationships. And you have this situation. So the UK nuclear deterrent is a Trident, which is sent from the submarine and is basically entirely dependent on the Americans. And there are so the French are developing new nuclear capabilities, and they sit outside of the sphere of influence of the Americans and indeed NATO. France has got an interesting relationship with NATO, where it's a little bit independent. And that is, I think, a good thing for France, because actually they are not dependent on the US for their nuclear capabilities. We are. We kind of have to ask permission. You know, we are beholden to the US. Now, you might argue that's a good thing, that there aren't, like, you know, the nation can't go off and do its own thing and be a bit crazy. But actually, in this moment where America's looking like they're going to detach from NATO if Trump gets into power, the UK has realised that we might need to get a little bit closer to Europe here. So some of you someone yesterday said, "God, you're such a freaking Europhile," or whatever. It's like, what is wrong with having some respect for the neighbouring continents? Like, why should I sit here and slag off Europe just because? Like, I want to work with colleagues here. Like, I don't know. Anyway, so. But it seems that our government realises this, that we can't have all our eggs in the American basket. So this is very interesting position. I don't know enough about this. I haven't read the Times article at all. So I could be barking up the wrong tree here. But it seems to me like there is some long-term strategizing from the UK to say, actually, if the US goes off on one, we need to be working with the EU and with Europe together to protect against the threat from Russia. And our nuclear capabilities need to be mitigated by us kind of alone, or us and Germany. And I just thought that was very interesting military strategizing there and positioning. So long-range missiles, these aren't, I don't think, nuclear missiles, but they are to take out the Russian nuclear missiles. So yeah, interesting. Let me know what you think about those ideas. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe and share. Really appreciate your support. Take care. Speak soon.